The light of 1,000 captured suns bled across the obsidian floor of the grand orrery, a chamber so vast it held its own gravitational tides. Here, at the heart of the Cathar conquered, constellations were not distant fires, but living, breathing tapestries of data woven into the very fabric of the void. They shifted and flowed, a silent, cosmic ballet governed by the will of the figures who stood upon the dais at its center. These were the arbiters of a dominion that spanned a spiral arm of the galaxy, beings ancient and deliberate, their forms as varied as the worlds they represented. Yet today, a single rogue star pulsed in their holographic charts, a point of light that was not a star at all, casting a shadow of disquiet that fell heavier than any planetary mass. Praetor Valerius of the Cathar, his carapace the color of cooled magma and etched with the lines of centuries, watched the anomaly with eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations. It was a gentle, unassuming gleam in the void, located on the fringe of a system the conquered had long dismissed as chaotic and inconsequential, the domain of the humans. The light was an echo, a ghost from a time of galactic mourning, a legend whispered by stellar winds and dismissed by the logical minds of the present. The ghost ship. For generations, it had been a story to frighten nascent spacefarers, a myth of a derelict vessel crewed by the echoes of a fallen race, its appearance a harbinger of cosmic sorrow. And now the legend had cast its soft, unnerving light upon their sensors. "It is a phantom," Executor Kor's voice was a low growl, the sound of tectonic plates grinding together. His form was broader than the praetor's, built for war and authority, his own carapace a polished, weaponized black. He stood with his powerful arms crossed, his gaze fixed not on the gentle gleam, but on the region of space it occupied. A sensor echo, a distortion caused by the unpredictable energies of the human star. Their technology is crude, prone to uncontrolled emissions. It is nothing more than stellar noise. "It is a signal we have not seen since the Great Collapse," countered Matriarch Lyra, her voice a series of soft, resonant chimes that seemed to hang in the air like crystalline dust. She was of the Glimmerax, a species of silicon-based life whose bodies were intricate lattices of light and crystal, their thoughts flowing as visible currents within their translucent forms. "My people remember the sorrow it portended. We remember the silence that followed. Noise does not carry the weight of memory, Executor." The chamber was a study in stillness, the only movement the slow, inexorable drift of the holographic cosmos around them. The conquered was built on a foundation of logic, of predictable outcomes and the meticulous management of galactic resources. They had risen from the ashes of a chaotic past, a time when empires clashed and stars were extinguished for strategic gain. The ghost ship was a relic of that time, a wound in the collective memory of the galaxy's elder races. Its reappearance was not merely an anomaly. It was a violation of the established peace, a whisper from a grave they had all agreed to leave undisturbed. Valerius let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of the matriarch's words to settle. The Glimmerax did not remember in the way the Cathar did, through archives and data streams. They experienced memory as a resonance, a vibration that echoed through their crystalline structures from one generation to the next. For them, the ghost ship's signal was not a historical fact, but a present, palpable grief. "The humans," Valerius finally spoke, his voice measured, each word a carefully placed stone in the foundation of his argument. "They are a new species, young, ephemeral. Their lifespans are a flicker in the galactic timescale. What connection could they possibly have to a relic of an age that predates their ascent from their own planetary dust?" "They are a paradox," Kor grated, gesturing with a heavy claw towards the region of space labeled Sol. "We have observed them for the span of their spacefaring age. They are fractured, driven by fleeting emotions and contradictory impulses. They build wonders with one hand and instruments of self-annihilation with the other. They compose symphonies that can fracture a Glimmerax heart with their beauty, and then they wage brutal, pointless wars over slivers of rock and ideology. To think they could command a relic of the precursors is an absurdity." The precursors. The name fell into the chamber's silence with the finality of a sealed tomb. They were the architects of the galaxy's ancient wonders, a civilization so advanced that their artifacts were indistinguishable from the laws of physics. They had vanished eons ago, leaving behind only silent monoliths, dormant gateways, and the legend of the ghost ship, their great, final testament, a vessel said to carry their sorrow across void. "Perhaps they did not command it," Matriarch Lyra chimed, the light within her form shifting to a soft, contemplative blue. "Perhaps they simply found it, and in their ignorance they have awakened it. A child playing with a funeral shroud, unaware of the body it once covered. This was the fear that coiled in the heart of the Conquered's chambers. Not that humanity was a new, rising power, but that they were a chaotic element, an unpredictable variable that had stumbled upon a power of profound and sorrowful significance. A power that had once brought the galaxy to its knees, not through war, but through a despair so complete it had shattered empires. The signal is gentle, Valerius mused, his ancient eyes fixed on the soft pulse of light. The legends always spoke of a lament, a cry of loss that echoed in the subspace channels. This is different. It is not a wail. It is a hum, a presence. A presence that has no place in this era, Kor insisted, his voice hardening. It is a sickness from the past, and the humans are its vector. They are too unstable to be trusted with such a thing. If they have claimed this ship, they may see it as a weapon. Their history is a litany of turning plows into swords. Or they may see it as a key, Lyra countered. The humans possess a quality we find difficult to quantify. We see their short lives as a weakness, a flaw in their design, but it gives them a perspective we have long since lost. A sense of urgency, a desperate need to imbue their fleeting existence with meaning. They seek answers with a ferocity that borders on the sublime. Perhaps they look at this ship not as a weapon or a tomb, but as an answer to a question they have not yet learned to ask. Valerius considered this. The human species was a constant source of debate within the Conquered. Their expansion had been slow, cautious, almost hesitant compared to the explosive growth of other young races. They seemed more interested in observing, in listening to the static between the stars than in conquest. Their ships were more often laboratories and observatories than warships. Yet their history, as Kor had noted, was stained with internal conflict. They were a species at war with themselves, a duality that made them dangerously unpredictable. The fleet is on standby, Kor stated, a declaration rather than a suggestion. A vast armada of conquered warships, silent and formidable, hung in the dark space just beyond the Cathar home system, their engines cold but ready. We must move to contain this, isolate the human system, seize the artifact before they can unleash its sorrow upon us again. We must be decisive. And what would that accomplish, Executor? Valerius's tone was sharp, a rare show of impatience. You would arrive with warships and threats, confirming every fear the humans might have of the galaxy beyond their small cradle. You would turn their curiosity into terror, their confusion into aggression. You would create the very enemy you fear. That is not the way of the Conquered. The way of the Conquered is to preserve stability, Kor's voice boomed, the holographic stars rippling with the force of his words. This apparition threatens that stability. It is a contagion of memory, of an ancient despair that this galaxy has finally learned to forget. Are we to stand by while a race of emotional primitives reopens that wound? The debate raged, a storm of logic and fear, of ancient memory and pragmatic concern. The fate of humanity, a species largely unaware that it was the subject of such a momentous conversation, hung in the balance. They were a minor note in the grand cosmic symphony, but they had unknowingly placed their hands upon an instrument of immense power and resonance. The Conquered could silence them, a simple, brutal act of cosmic censorship. Or they could attempt to understand, to reach out and discover the meaning behind the gentle, pulsing light that had so disturbed the long peace. Valerius let the arguments wash over him. He had seen this before, this clash between fear and curiosity, between the impulse to control and the wisdom of observation. It was the eternal struggle that defined all intelligent life. He looked again at the soft gleam on the orrery floor, a single point of light that held the potential for either a new era of understanding or a return to an age of sorrow. It was not shouting. It was not threatening. It was waiting. Finally, he raised a hand, and silence descended upon the chamber once more. The gravity of his office was absolute. "We will not send a war fleet," he declared, his voice resonating with finality. His gaze met Kor's unwavering. "But we will not stand idle. We will send an envoy, a vessel of peace, of diplomacy, but it will be escorted. Your ship's executor will provide a screen. They will remain cloaked at a distance, a promise of our strength, but not a demonstration of it." Kor's jaw tightened, but he gave a slow, respectful nod. It W. As a compromise, but one that acknowledged the potential threat. "And who will be this envoy?" he asked. Valerius turned his gaze to the crystalline form of the Glimmerax matriarch. "You, matriarch Lyra, your people feel the resonance of the past. You will be best equipped to understand the nature of this echo, and you will be able to communicate with the humans in a way that our more rigid Cathar diplomacy might fail to achieve." Lyra's inner light pulsed with a brilliant, steady white. "It would be an honor, Praetor, To face the ghost is to understand the life it left behind. We will go and listen to the song this light is singing." Valerius nodded, a slow, ancient gesture of finality. The decision was made. A mission was being sent to the edge of human space, to the source of a legendary light. It was a mission of discovery, but one shadowed by the possibility of cataclysmic failure. As the figures on the dais dispersed, their forms dissolving back into the data streams of the conquered, Valerius remained for a long moment, alone in the vastness of the orrery. He watched the gentle gleam, the impossible star, and felt a tremor of something he had not felt in millennia. It was not fear, it was awe, and a profound uncertainty about what they would find when they finally pulled back the curtain on the galaxy's greatest and most sorrowful legend. The humans, in their chaotic, brilliant infancy, were now the custodians of a ghost, and the entire galaxy held its breath to see if they would be haunted by it, or if they would learn to speak its name. The vessel designated the messenger of resonant light was less a ship and more a piece of sculpted crystal, a Glimmerax creation that moved through the void not by displacing it, but by harmonizing with it. Aboard, Matriarch Lyra felt the thrum of subspace travel as a symphony of shifting frequencies. With her were two Cathar aides, stoic and silent observers tasked by Valerius to record the proceedings with cold, objective logic. Beyond their vessel, unseen and unheard, traveled the silent might of Executor Corps' fleet, a promise of steel hidden within a velvet overture. Their destination was a point in the empty, cold space between stars, where the gentle gleam had been pinpointed. As they transitioned from the distorted reality of subspace to the clear, cold vacuum of the real, the light was there. It was not a point of brilliance as it had appeared on the orrery's charts, but a vast, ethereal structure, its form shimmering, indistinct, as if it were woven from moonlight and memory. It was immense, larger than any capital ship in the conquered fleet, yet it had no discernible hull, no weapon emplacements, no engine signatures that their sensors could recognize. It simply was. It pulsed with a soft, internal luminescence, a steady, rhythmic beat like a slow and patient heart. This was the ghost ship, and it was more beautiful and more terrifying than any legend had ever described. "Sensors are struggling to resolve its composition," one of the Cathar aides reported, its voice a flat monotone that belied the sheer impossibility of the data scrolling across its console. "It appears to be a stable projection of light, and something else, a form of exotic matter we have no classification for. There are no life signs in the conventional sense, no energy readings consistent with a functioning starship." "And yet it is here," Lyra chimed, her own form resonating with the soft pulse of the colossal vessel. She could feel it, a deep underlying hum that was not sound, but something more fundamental. It was a feeling of profound stillness, of immense, silent waiting. It was not the lament of the legends, it was peace. "We are being hailed," the other Cathar announced, its tone laced with a hint of surprise. "A standard multi-spectrum communication broadcast, it's human." The transmission was opened, and a voice filled the bridge of the Glimmerax vessel. It was a female voice, calm and clear, without any trace of alarm or aggression. It was a voice that held a quiet, confident warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, silent majesty of the ship from which it emanated. "This is Dr. Aris Thorne of the archival vessel Odyssey. You have entered a designated zone of remembrance. We welcome you in peace. Please state your intentions." The Cathar aides exchanged a look of disbelief. Odyssey, an archival vessel, they had expected a military designation, a warning, or perhaps panicked silence, not a placid welcome from a doctor. Matriarch Lyra moved forward, her crystalline form catching the light from the viewscreen. The hum she felt from the ship seemed to resonate with the calm in the human's voice. "This is Matriarch Lyra of the Glimmerax, representing the Cathar conquered. We have come to understand the nature of your vessel. It broadcasts a signal that is known to our people, one associated with a time of great galactic sorrow. We seek to understand why it has reappeared." There was a pause on the other end, a moment of thoughtful silence. Then the human voice returned, tinged with a soft note of understanding. "The great sorrow? Yes, our historical databases contain references to that period, though the records are fragmented. You are referring to the resonance of the precursor memorial." Memorial, the word hung in the air of the bridge, charged with meaning. Not a ship, not a weapon, a memorial. "We would be honored to receive you aboard the Odyssey," the voice continued. "To show you what we have found, what we have chosen to become. We are unarmed and our purpose is one of preservation. You have our word." Executor Kor's voice suddenly crackled to life over a private channel, a harsh burst of static in the serene atmosphere of the bridge. Matriarch, it is a trap. Unarmed, the energy readings from that structure could power a fleet. Do not board, we will move in and contain it. Lyra felt a tremor of dissonance. Kor's fear was a sharp, jagged frequency. The human's voice, the ship's hum, they were a smooth, steady chord. She had to trust her senses, the very core of her being which felt truth as a form of resonance. Executor, your fleet will remain cloaked and at a distance, she transmitted back, her tone gentle but firm. We will proceed as invited. I do not sense deception here. I sense something else, something we have not encountered before. With a chime of confirmation to the human, a boarding shuttle was prepared. It was a small, diplomatic craft, gleaming and non-threatening. As it detached from the messenger of resonant light and moved across the void toward the shimmering, colossal form of the Odyssey, the Cathar aides maintained a stoic silence, their duty to observe overriding their ingrained suspicion. Matriarch Lyra, however, felt a sense of profound anticipation. The ghost ship was not what they had thought. It was something other. And humanity, the chaotic, emotional, short-lived species, was at its heart. The shuttle did not dock in a conventional sense. As it approached, a section of the shimmering, light-filled hull seemed to dissolve, opening a pathway into the vessel's interior. The air inside was breathable, the gravity stable, the light soft and diffuse. The passage closed behind them, seamless and silent. They had been absorbed. They found themselves in a vast, silent chamber. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, all seemed to be made of the same softly glowing, pearl-like material. The air hummed with a low, almost subliminal energy, and standing before them alone was a single human figure. She was of average height for her species, her hair dark, her eyes a shade of brown that seemed to hold a deep, patient intelligence. She wore a simple, unadorned uniform of dark blue. There were no guards, no weapons, only this one woman, her expression open and welcoming. This was Dr. Aris Thorne. Matriarch Lyra, it is a profound honor, Aris said, her voice the same calm, reassuring tone from the transmission. She gave a slight bow of her head, a gesture of respect. Welcome to the Odyssey. You are its entire crew? One of the Cathar aides asked, its voice flat with disbelief. Aris smiled, a faint, gentle expression. I am its current caretaker. Its crew is much, much larger. Please allow me to show you. She turned and began to walk, her footsteps making no sound on the luminous floor. They followed her, the Cathar moving with rigid precision, Lyra gliding with a soft chime of her crystalline body. They moved through corridors that were not corridors, but vast, open spaces that seemed to stretch into infinity, filled with the same soft, ambient light. There was no machinery visible, no conduits, no control panels. The ship felt less like a piece of technology and more like a place of worship. Our species found this vessel adrift in the dark between galaxies, Aris explained as they walked, her voice echoing softly in the immense space. It was silent, dark, a true ghost. We thought it was a derelict of some unknown civilization. We spent decades studying it, trying to understand its purpose. We assumed it was a weapon, a power source, a generational ship. We, as you have no doubt observed, have a tendency to see things through a lens of utility and conflict. She led them into a central chamber, a space so vast that the far walls were lost in a pearlescent haze. And here, floating in the air, were countless points of light. They were not stars. They were small, intricate spheres of gently pulsing energy, trillions upon trillions of them, arranged in great, swirling patterns that resembled galactic clusters. They filled the chamber with a soft, multicolored glow, a silent, breathtaking aurora. This is the crew, Aris said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. This is the cargo, this is the purpose of the Odyssey. Matriarch Lyra drifted closer to one of the spheres of light. As she did, she felt a sudden overwhelm. In wave of something, it was not data, it was feeling. A song, a sense of deep familial love, the memory of sunlight on a world with a turquoise sky, the complex joy of solving a mathematical proof. It was a life, a consciousness, preserved. What is this? Lyra chimed, her own light flickering with astonished emotion. This is a library, Aris said, her gaze sweeping across the endless field of lights. Each point of light is the complete conscious and cultural record of a civilization that is no more. The precursors did not build a ghost ship to carry their sorrow. They built an ark to carry the memory of everyone else. When a species was facing its end, by asteroid impact, by stellar evolution, by its own hand, the ship would appear. It would not intervene. It would only listen. It would record everything. The totality of their existence. Their art, their science, their philosophies, their love, their fear. Every thought of every individual preserved in a state of peaceful, eternal reflection. The two Cathar were frozen, their logical minds struggling to process the scale of what they were seeing. This was not a memorial. It was a mausoleum for a galaxy's worth of dead civilizations. The Great Collapse, it was not a war. It was an extinction event, and this ship was its only witness. The signal you detected, Aris continued, was not a lament. It was the ship's activation sequence. When we finally understood what this vessel was, we had a choice. A profound choice for a species as young and as troubled as our own. She turned to face them, her eyes reflecting the million-colored lights of the dead. We could have tried to harness this technology, turned it into a weapon of unimaginable power. We could have hidden it, fearing it, but we did something else. We chose to accept the responsibility it represented. We became its new caretakers. We repaired its systems, restarted its mission. The gentle gleam you saw, that was us, switching the lights back on. The sheer, monumental ethics of the human decision settled upon the visitors with a physical weight. A young, volatile species, which the conquered had dismissed as little more than clever barbarians, had stumbled upon the galaxy's most sacred relic. And instead of exploiting it, they had embraced its purpose with a reverence that was humbling. But why? The Cathar aide finally managed to ask, the question a crack in its stoic facade. Your lives are so short. Why would you dedicate yourselves to preserving the memories of those who are not your own? Aris looked at the Cathar, and her smile was no longer just gentle. It was filled with a deep, ancient wisdom that seemed to defy her species' ephemeral nature. Precisely because our lives are so short, we understand loss in a way that a species that lives for millennia cannot. Every day we lose people we love. Every day we are faced with the terror of our own non-existence. The idea of a thought, a song, a life being lost forever, that is the most terrifying thing in the universe to us. We have a saying, a person dies twice, once when they take their final breath and again the last time their name is spoken. Our mission here is simple. We ensure that no one ever dies that second death. Matriarch Lyra felt a resonance with the human's words so powerful it made her crystalline structure vibrate with a new, brilliant light. The Glimmerax valued memory above all else, but they had only ever concerned themselves with their own. The humans, in their fleeting, fragile existence, had found a purpose that transcended species, that transcended self. They were not the galaxy's unruly children. They were its beating heart, its conscience. The signal was not a ghost's wail, Lyra chimed, her voice filled with awe. It was a librarian's gentle call to silence so that she may read from the books of the lost. Aris nodded slowly. We travel the void, seeking not new worlds to conquer, but old stories to save. The ship has a new name now, one we gave it. We call it the Emissary of Silence, because it is in the silence, when all the shouting of empires and ambitions has ceased, that you can finally hear the voices that truly matter. She then gestured to a larger, more brilliant sphere of light that pulsed at the center of the vast chamber. This is the core archive, the precursor's own record. It is why they built this ark. They did not die out, they left, and they left a warning. As they approached the central sphere, the light intensified, and the air grew thick with a sense of immense cosmic time. Information flowed from the sphere not as images or sounds, but as pure conceptual understanding, flooding their minds directly. They saw the precursors, beings of pure energy and unimaginable intellect, their civilization spanning not just the galaxy, but the local group. They saw them detect a pattern, a terrifying, slow-moving wave spreading through the fabric of the universe itself. It wasn't an invasion. G-force, it was a phenomenon, a great silence. They saw galaxy after galaxy on the edge of the observable universe simply go dark, not exploding but fading. The light of their stars dimming, the energy of their civilizations vanishing, as if some fundamental law of physics were being slowly, inexorably rewritten. It was a wave of entropy, a creeping cosmic death that was moving across the universe, extinguishing everything it touched. The precursors, for all their power, could not stop it, so they made a choice. They sent a portion of their race out into the vast, dark intergalactic void, a desperate gamble to cross the wave of silence and find what lay beyond. And they left this ship behind, the Emissary, as a seed bank, a repository of all the life and knowledge of their galactic cluster, in the hope that if the silence ever receded, or if their explorers ever returned, life would not have to begin anew from scratch. The revelation was staggering, an intellectual blow that dwarfed the emotional impact of the Library of Souls. The ghost ship was not a legend about the past. It was a warning about the future. a future that was coming for them all. "The silence is still out there," Aris said, her voice a solemn anchor in the swirling sea of cosmic dread. "Our long-range sensors, amplified by the ship's systems, can just barely detect its edge. It is unimaginably far away, millions of light years. It will not reach this galaxy in our lifetime, or the lifetime of the Cathar, or even the Glimmerax. But it is coming. The universe is slowly, quietly being turned off." Executor Core, listening in from his flagship millions of kilometers away, heard the report from his aides, heard the translated conceptual data from the precursor archive. On the bridge of his warship, surrounded by the deadliest technology the Conquered could produce, he felt an utter and profound helplessness. His weapons were designed to fight ships, to shatter planets. How could he fight the heat death of the universe? How could he wage war against a fundamental change in the laws of reality? In that moment he understood. Humanity's choice was not merely ethical, it was the only logical response to a problem that could not be fought. It could only be endured and remembered. The report sent back to the grand orrery of the Cathar Conquered did not cause a debate. It caused a profound, collective silence. The holographic charts of the galaxy, once a symbol of their dominion and control, now seemed fragile, a fleeting map of a temporary state of being. The arbiters of the Conquered, who had spent their long lives managing the predictable ebb and flow of galactic politics, were now faced with a truth that was absolute and unforgiving. Their entire civilization, their long history, their meticulous plans for the future, they were all a sentence in a book that was slowly, page by page, being erased. Praetor Valerius stood on the dais, his ancient form seeming more brittle than before. He looked at the gentle gleam, which no longer represented a single ship, but now symbolized the totality of life, memory, and the courage to face oblivion. He had underestimated the humans. They all had. They had seen them as emotional, chaotic, and short-lived. They had failed to see that these very qualities were what had prepared them for this truth. Their short lives gave them an appreciation for legacy. Their emotional depth gave them the empathy to care for the memories of strangers. Their chaotic, searching nature had led them not to a weapon, but to a purpose far greater than any the Conquered had ever conceived for itself. The Conquered's next official communication with the emissary of silence was not a demand or a threat, but a request, an offer. They did not seek to control the ship, they sought to serve its mission. A new fleet was dispatched to the human system. It was not a war fleet. It was a flotilla of the Conquered's finest scientific and archival vessels, ships from every member species, their crews comprised of the best historians, xenolinguists, and data archivists in the galaxy. They came not as conquerors or superiors, but as apprentices. Matriarch Lyra remained aboard the emissary, a permanent liaison between the Conquered and Dr. Aris Thorn. The two of them, the ancient crystalline being and the short-lived human, spent their cycles walking through the silent, light-filled halls, sharing in the stories of the lost. Lyra taught Aris how to feel the resonance of a Glimmerax memory, and Aris showed Lyra how to find the beauty in the fragmented, emotional chaos of a human poem. They were two different forms of life, from two different ends of the galactic timescale, united by a single, sacred duty. Executor Core, the hardened warrior, did something no one expected. He decommissioned his flagship, the most powerful vessel in the Conquered fleet, and had it refitted. Its weapon systems were stripped out, replaced with the most advanced LAN. G-range sensor arrays the Cathar could build. He renamed it the Watcher on the Void, and he himself took command of its new mission, to travel to the edge of the galaxy and monitor the advance of the Great Silence, to give the new alliance of memory as much warning as possible. He had found a new war to fight, one that would not be won with torpedoes and plasma cannons, but with knowledge, with time, and with the stubborn refusal to let the light go out without a witness. Praetor Valerius, in a broadcast to all the worlds of the Conquered, officially reclassified the human species. They were not a developing race. They were not a chaotic anomaly. They were designated as a keystone civilization, not for their power or their technology, but for their spirit. They were the species that had looked into the face of ultimate cosmic meaninglessness and had responded by creating meaning. They had answered the universe's silence with a chorus of remembrance. On the bridge of the Emissary of Silence, Aris Thorn stood with Matriarch Lyra, looking out at the starfield through the vessel's shimmering, translucent hull. The Conquered fleet was arrayed before them, a beautiful, multi-formed collection of ships, their lights blinking in the darkness. It was no longer just a human mission. It was a galactic one. "It is a heavy burden," Lyra chimed softly, the light within her form a deep, thoughtful violet. "To be the memory of a universe." "It is," Aris agreed, her voice quiet. But it's also a profound privilege to know that even when the last star fades, the story of its light will still be told. She placed her hand on a nearby console, and the vast chamber of lights brightened in response. The hum of the ship deepened, a sound of serene, eternal purpose. The ghost ship of legend was well and truly gone. In its place was a beacon, its gentle gleam no longer a mystery or a harbinger of sorrow, but a promise. A promise that no matter how deep the darkness or how profound the silence, something of life would endure. Not in the flesh, not in stone or steel, but in the one place that oblivion could never truly touch, in a story held safe and passed on. The universe would end, but thanks to the unexpected wisdom of its most fragile children, it would not be forgotten. And in that, there was a victory greater than any empire could ever hope to achieve. The gentle gleam pulsed, a steady, cosmic heartbeat in the encroaching night.